With hundreds of exhibitors, including architects, building companies, designers, and anything you can think of when it comes to tech for your home, this is the place to be if you're thinking of building or renovating anywhere. Let's go and take a look around. Joining me now is Jason Orme, who is the editorial director of Homebuilding and Renovating magazine. So, Jason, thanks for joining us.
No problem.
Now, you've been working on this project and on these shows in the magazine for a long time, haven't you? So
Yeah.
Can you tell us about how it all started?
Well, that's right. Well, I mean, many years ago, a few decades ago, really, we felt that there was a group of people who needed information, really, and it's people going through the biggest property decision of their life to want to build or renovate their own home. They're spending hundreds of thousands of pounds, and they got very little information out there to help them. So home building and renovating is really all about, I guess, teeing up people to go on and do this really difficult thing that they've never done before.
And giving the information and tools to go ahead.
Well, that's right. I mean, for most people who've never done it, obviously dealing with builders, dealing with insulation supplies, all the things that you have to do when you're building a house is just incredibly forbidding and really worrisome. So this is the biggest investment they're ever going to make in property, and they need information and they're really hungry for information, and obviously we're there to help them get started. They're not going to know everything, but hopefully they'll know the things to avoid and the paths to go down.
So you must come across lots of people who are, renovating for the first time, maybe trying to build their own home, getting planning. What's one of the main obstacles that people come up against when they come to speak to you?
There's lots of challenges. It's usually the first time they've ever decided to do a project of that size.
Yeah.
So the main thing that people can do is research, is become better educated, become a better self-builder or a better renovator, and it will be so much easier. And give themselves time.
Yeah.
People want to rush. Just take time, because when professionals rush, or when clients rush or builders rush, that's when mistakes happen.
So Andy, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Now, we want to know what you're talking about today on stage and what are the main sort of subjects that you're covering.
Main subjects seem to be the most popular things that people are doing in their build: kitchens, bathrooms, single-story extensions, loft conversions. The one we've just finished was kitchens, which a lot of people seem to be doing, but everyone's got different budgets. Yeah. So I think the key thing from that was working out what your budget can get you. If you haven't got as much as you want, which a lot of people haven't, there are ways of saving money.
Now, you've been coming along to the Homebuilding and Renovating Show for a long time, and you're giving lots of talks this weekend. So can you tell us a bit about making the most of your space in your home?
Yeah, I think the very first question that you need to ask yourself is, what am I actually going to do with this space? It's something we hear quite a lot. Somebody will come to us with a set of drawings for an extension or a loft conversion or whatever. Can you make this? And I say, okay, can we talk on an emotional level first of all? What are you going to do with it? Just because the architect has drawn it this way, you don't have to have it that way. If you want that moved, the wall moved over, the window moved over a little bit so you can get more shelf space in there or whatever. Let's be sure of what you're clear of what you're going to do with that space, and that gives us it's almost like a mood board, if you like.
Tell us, how important is design to you, and how did you get involved in house renovation in the first place?
I cannot stress how important design is, and I think whether you have the budget to pay for a designer or whether you're taking your own project on, really invest time in design up front, because once that builder's on board in your house, they kind of hold all the cards. So really spend the time thinking, what do I like, what do I not like, and draw up that wish list. And don't necessarily, be influenced by trends, but don't be totally guided by them, because this is your opportunity, if you're undertaking, renovation projects, to make your kitchen, your bathroom, your dining room, whatever it might be, as you want it. So look for inspiration in design, and then just create something that you really like.
And go for what works for you and your lifestyle. And
exactly. So yeah, when you're thinking about the design, really think, so let's take, say, a kitchen diner, for example. Really think about how you use that space. Are you someone who runs out the door in the morning and you just grab a coffee, but then you like having friends over at the weekends for big dinners? So then you might want you know, a big kitchen table might be your priority.
Yeah.
Or are you someone who likes to wash up and look out at the garden or look out at something?
Yeah.
Then think about the positioning of that. Do you like to cook with the, you know, the hob in the
like an
island,
island
so you're
kind of thing.
looking
Yeah.
out? Yeah.
Yeah.
So really drill down and think about who is living in your home at different points of the day, who's there, and what bits of your kitchen do you enjoy and what works for you at the moment.
What do you think, is that the main thing that people do, is sort of underestimate the amount of time that it's going to take for a build?
Yeah, it's one of the big things, and people want to be involved in self-build or self-renovation, and it's making sure they've got enough time in their own lives. It's a big commitment, but it's worthwhile, but you have to be able to commit to it and give the time.
Yeah. And in your talks that you have on stage here at the show, what's your main thing in terms of building eco-friendly houses? What's the main sort of takeaway for people from that?
If anybody takes away one thing, it's about using the fabric first approach. So it's getting the forever bit of the home correct. It's not about adding in eco bling or all these different technologies. It's the forever house. So it's the insulation, the structure of the building, and making sure it's airtight. Any heat that they do have to put into the house then won't escape. And that's the key thing. You can put that into renovation projects or new self-builds. So it's fabric first, thinking about the forever bit.
How important would you say is renewable energy to new homes that are being built now, if you are a self-builder out there looking to start a project?
I think it's very important. I mean, you've got to look at the situation with building materials now. We've got such more advanced materials available, and they're so thermally efficient. What we're finding is that the actual building fabrics now are so good, you can actually heat quite a large property off a very, very low heating source. So even a small 6 kilowatt air source heat pump these days can do up to a sort of 150 square metre property, which was 10 years ago was impossible. So as building regulations drive forward and we get far more energy efficiency legislation, renewables become much more important.
Do you think that people have become more informed? Because there is, a plethora of programmes and TV shows out there for people to find out about the subject.
Yeah, I think so. I think people, what we don't have to do anymore is convince people that it's a good idea to do it. I think, despite grand designs in many ways, and actually, they do want to go on and do it. There's a huge demand for people to go on and build their own home. But what hasn't changed actually is all the difficulties they face, from finding land, getting the money to go on and build, dealing with builders. All those things are exactly the same now as they were 20 years ago, if not slightly worse, actually.
And in terms of you doing a number of talks here on the stage at the show live, what's the main point that you want to get across in the talks that you're giving?
Yeah, I think it's just trying to get people over that kind of hurdle of actually getting serious about it. I think people watch grand designs and they have a couple of glasses of wine and then they think they go on right move and try and find some land and all that kind of stuff. And it's never going to happen that way. You've really got to put in the hard yards, particularly at the early stage of the project, finding the land, dealing with the designers, all that kind of stuff. And actually, if you can get that right, get those foundations right, then the rest of the build is actually usually very enjoyable. Where you see things going wrong is where that early stage stuff just hasn't been done properly.
Yeah, so it's all about doing your research.
Planning, research, all that kind of stuff.
What else do you see coming onto the market in terms of renewable energy?
I think as the technology develops, heat pumps have become so advanced now compared to what they were like a few years ago. Unfortunately in the UK, because we've had the benefit of North Sea gas, we've been fairly backward with renewables. If you look at what's going on in Scandinavia, they've had heat pumps since the 1970s, because when the oil crisis hit, they couldn't afford oil. So they switched over to heat pumps because electricity out there through hydroelectric power is very cheap and available. So we are pretty much running behind the game, and most of our customers who are heating engineers, they're very much used to just fitting a gas boiler. Now, gas is obviously still a relatively cheap commodity given the cost of electricity. So we have to be mindful of that. But I think as we import more and more natural gas, that dynamic may change, and it's difficult to predict. But we certainly see as a company the number of heat pumps that we sell is growing. And the more new builds that are being built, which obviously is a big demand for new housing stock now, heat pumps will be the future.
And speaking of kitchens, you've been talking about not to be led too much by trends.
Yeah.
What's going on at the moment in terms of trends for kitchens, and what do you see people doing that you think, oh yes, and maybe not so much?
Okay, I think people have become totally obsessed by islands. And, we are here today at the London Homebuilding Renovating Show, and in London, we are under pressure for space.
Yes.
And often, lots of Victorian properties, they're quite narrow. And so people will come and they're like, oh, I want this island. And actually, once you start speccing out that actual space, islands can still work, and you can have quite narrow ones, and, you can make them functional as well with having either your hob or your sink in them. But again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, and thinking about how you use that space, where you might be considering having an island, think about actually whether a big kitchen table might serve the same purpose. You can still use it for sitting to have your morning coffee, you can still use it for food prep, and then it will serve a dual sort of purpose, because in a small space, islands do look great, but you might then have an island and then be left with a sort of piddly little space for a table.
Or not be able to have a dining table, for example. Well, one of the fastest growing areas of interest in terms of home renovation is in the garden. And I'm here with Cyan Astley, who is a property expert and also a lady builder. Describe yourself as a lady builder there, because there aren't as many females in the industry, are there?
No, I was reading some research about this week, and there aren't as many as there should be, because we bring a lot of stuff to the table.
Definitely.
Builders,
Yeah. And speaking of gardens, now you've been doing lots of garden projects over the last year or so, working on the TV show, Getting the Builders In. Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
So everybody wants this sort of outside, inside, taking the inside out and vice versa. Yeah. And especially because everybody's doing these huge and fantastic kitchen dining room spaces, aren't they? So when you look out of your massive bifold doors, you want to see a gorgeous garden.
Of course, yes.
So yeah,
you want
so
to extend it out there.
Absolutely.
And what would be the sort of main problems that people come up against when they're trying to do that?
I think, people kind of get in a bit of a rut with their gardens. And gardening is one of those things that most people do more of as you get older.
Yes.
But actually, you can have really, really funky, on-trend contemporary garden spaces now. I think it's a challenge to rethink your garden, but there's so much inspiration out there, isn't there now? You can go on Pinterest or Instagram or go online or pick up magazines, so there's a huge amount of interest and inspiration out there. So I think garden rooms, it's all about garden rooms at the minute.
Yeah, and bringing it in as well, because obviously in the UK we don't always have the weather on our side, do we? So that's a factor to think about as well, I guess.
That actually works, whether you're bringing the outside in or vice versa. Yeah. So when you create these beautiful spaces inside, it's all about greenery at the minute. There's a massive trend for greenery and having plants inside. So there's that really beautiful connection between inside and out. But also, if you're going to build an outside room, then put a roof on it. Yes. Don't put a roof on it. Don't just have a pergola with open timbers above, but actually put something over the top. Yeah. So in the winter, you can go out and eat your turkey butty on Boxing Day.
It sounds obvious, but I guess a lot of people don't think of stuff like that.
They don't, but increasingly they are doing. Yeah. So I think you want that space. If you're going to spend money on that space outside, then you want it to work 12 months of the year, not just 3.
Definitely.
Especially, or up north.
Yeah.
2.
Well, anywhere in the UK, I would say. And you've also been advising the government as well, haven't you, on self-builds and how to make that easier for people. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, obviously the government's very keen to build more houses, for us all to build more houses as a country for obvious reasons, I think. And they see that the existing housing market, the big house builders, they're only ever going to deliver so many houses, I think. So they feel that people who want to build their own homes should be able to go on and do that and commission their own and add more to that. So they're very interested in how they can help to ease the process. And obviously the main thing that they can influence is planning policy and financial provision, I guess. So there's a huge amount of work still to do, but actually we've managed to secure things like the right to build, where individuals can badger their local authority to effectively register with their local authority and get a building plot from them within 3 years. So there's a huge framework there that helps ordinary people go and build their own home in a way that wasn't there probably 5 years ago. But it's still just filtering down to the local level.
So for someone who's watching this, who's wanting to start their own self-build, what's the single best piece of advice you would give them?
Well, I mean, building your own home is all about choice and decisions, isn't it? That's the reason we do it. We want to have decision and control over the house that we live in. And actually, that can be quite tiresome at the end of a project. There's 700, 800 key decisions in any house building project, from the key ones, which are like design and choosing builders, through to, you know, not just the door handles, but what position on the door they're going to go on. So the more you can decide and think about now, or this kind of early planning stage, kind of even before you've bought a plot, really, you know, actually the easier it is. I mean, the key mistake people make is not having a clear idea of the priority that they're in it for. Why are you doing it? You know, are you doing it for a home for you for the rest of your life? Are you doing it to kind of, you know, maybe make a bit of money out of becoming a developer almost? Are you doing it to live in for 5 years before you move on? All those things affect those decisions earlier on. And so actually having a very clear idea of why you're doing it is the biggest thing that people can do, really.
And on the flip side of that, what would you say is the most common mistake?
Yeah, well, I mean, ultimately, there's the classic mistake, which is the kind of process between design and build, that rubbing point, really, where, you know, people go to a designer and they have their idea of what their home's going to be, and they tell them their budget, and that budget gets misinterpreted as a potential build cost. The budget for most people is what they can afford to spend. It isn't what the house is going to cost. So you get this kind of classic kind of touch point where the design comes back from the designer, it goes out to a builder, and all of a sudden the build quotes are twice what they expected. And that's the problem. The reason that happens is because that budget was never really a build cost budget. So be very realistic about build costs early on and get some expertise in that area early on. And that process can be a lot easier than it is for most people. So.
Yeah. And what would you say are some of the main sort of stumbling blocks that people come across, or the main errors they make when redoing their kitchen or bathroom?
I think you've got to remember, if you're in an old house, you could have problems. And I don't mean problems as a big thing. If you've got a lath and plaster ceiling, for example, you can't put new LED lights in because there's nothing to fix to. You've got to have a plasterboard or something similar.
Okay.
When you take out an old bathroom, you could have a rotten floor joist, or your floor could be doing that. Your wall could be kicking out. Kitchens, we just done one recently. We took everything out. There's no damp course, so there was a really strong smell of damp. So just bear in mind, you may have things quite different once you've taken stuff out. But work with a good builder, and you know these problems are overcome easily.
Now, just quickly, if you could tell us a bit about your reverse living concept, because I know you've been blogging about that quite a lot since coming here to the Home Building and Renovating Show.
Yeah, well, it was after, coming to the Home Building and Renovating Show many years ago and sharing my designs, because at the show you can have this opportunity where you book a 15-minute slot with an expert. And I was like, this is amazing. Because I was on a budget, I designed my flat loft conversion myself, and it was a total remodel of the existing flat. And up in the loft space, I wanted to reverse the living so I could have a lounge, kitchen, diner in the new loft space. And I wanted a roof terrace. And so I was thinking, you know, if I have friends over, I wouldn't want people coming up through a bedroom to get to the only bit of outside space on the roof terrace. So I was like, let's flip the living, and then the lounge, kitchen, diner is accessible to the roof terrace.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'd sort of come up with this design myself, having seen some inspiration from America where they're tight on space. And, showed it to the experts here and said, you know, does this design work? Is this budget that I've got sort of okay? Yeah. And, I was given sort of real confidence for it. So, you know, ploughed ahead. And now I think it's got real wow factor. You know, you come into the flat and what was the existing flat is now 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. And then, you know, you go up the stairs and it's got this sort of real wow factor because you've got this open plan lounge, kitchen, diner with a roof terrace. So, you know, back in the day, pre the works, you know, if I wanted to have al fresco dining, you know, it would be a picnic in the park, you know, with my sandwich on a blanket. Whereas now, you know, I've got outside space to eat at.
You manage your rental properties. You've got your own blog as well, which is Morgeous. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how they connect together?
So I've been writing the Morgeous blog for years now, and I describe it as a bit of a dirty bag of chips compared to lots of clean eating, because there's lots of blogs out there. They're so clean and pretty, aren't they? And mine just isn't. It's a lady builder's blog. So I write about the things that I do, you know, every month or whatever, just different things. Sometimes I write about the filthy side of the work, of the job, and sometimes I cover the design trends. So it's a bit of a mixed bag.
So tell us a bit about one of the filthier sides of the job.
Oh, I love being in skips.
Yeah.
I really like being in. I love a good skip delve. I do. And I actually quite like, the other day I was underneath the floor in our house with a wire, trying to get the wire from one side of the house to the other, crawling through the rubble underneath. the floor. And I do quite like that dirty stuff. I like getting
Quite
stuck in.
interesting.
I
Yeah.
really like getting stuck
Yeah.
in. A lot of people do now, I think. People are now increasingly involved with DIY and they want to have a go, don't they?
And you obviously build a lot all around the UK, but particularly in Edinburgh. Can you tell us a bit about the challenges that you faced building there?
It's it's with the same as the UK. It's finding a plot actually is the key, the biggest thing. It's the longest thing that it takes for self-builders, is getting that plot, getting the right plot, so making sure it's got services, it's correct for them. In Edinburgh, it's trickier because it's really built up, so it's gap sites or buying an old house to demolish and then build your new house. But that replicates throughout the UK, really.
And I guess that throws up, if you are buying something old and you need to demolish it, that throws up a whole load of new problems for you.
It does, but you've also got the benefit of you save the VAT. So
Right.
new builds are VAT exempt. So there's a massive saving there as opposed to a renovation project. So that the cost of demolition can be offset by the saving that they'll make on VAT.
You've just been doing a property down on the south coast, is that right?
Yes, I have, well remembered.
And how has that been? Is that finished now? How has that been going?
Yes, it's finished now, and actually the landscaping almost took as long as the kind of build inside. So that's another thing. Later on in the day, our last session here is all about sort of gardens and thinking about it. And that's we spoke about design at the beginning. You know, we spend so much time thinking about the design of our house, and then at the last minute we're like, oh, the house looks amazing. What are we going to do with the outside space?
Definitely.
And that thought should be given at the beginning as well, because if you are in a terraced house, for example, how are you going to access your garden out the back? So you don't want all the labourers and the building spoil and garden turf being traipsed through the house once it's finished. So think about all elements of the design, the actual house and the landscaping as well.
And are you there to help people along the way as they build their dream home?
For a self-build, it's a brave thing for anybody to do who doesn't understand building. And really most people building their own home don't actually understand the building process. So it's quite a scary process for them. And what we try and do is help, try and give advice, try and give information. Really it's all about information and setting their mind at rest so they understand what they're entering into.
Definitely. I think that's one of the main problems here. What you would say is the main problem you come up against when you're meeting new people going into their own self-build?
It's like stepping into the unknown for them. They know it's going to be a great thing to do, they just don't know. So really we try and give them the information so they do know, they understand, and then they can move forward to building their dream home.
Now I have to ask you, with your house on the coast, have you done any kind of nautical theme?
Nautical theme. Yes, everything's nautical. We've
I saw
gone
a house
crazy.
the other day and it was full of shells and seahorses and everything. It was
and
pretty
life
crazy.
rafts, what are they? Yeah, everywhere. I must admit, actually, I've sort of toned it down, but I've actually been helping my parents with that one by the coast.
Okay.
And, you know, love them to bits, but I'm not sure I'll do another renovation with them because, you know, we've got different design influences. So my mum keeps sort of sneaking in these really sort of chintzy, nautical themes, and I'm, you know...
I guess
like
that's going to happen with family,
shade.
isn't it?
It will. But, you know, I think what you've probably touched on there is that with any renovation project, it's your opportunity to make your home your own. So what I may choose, what you may choose, what someone else may choose will be totally different. You know, you'll have one space and it will be totally different for you and your family or how you want to live. So I think, you know, what is exciting is that you can make a home exactly how you want it to be.
Definitely. Well, Jo,
And if you want that seaside chintz,
do
get it in by the bucket load.
What is the thing that surprises people the most when they are doing their own renovation? Perhaps if they've never done one before.
Do you know, I think it's how long things take to do well. People, you can rush renovations and you can do them quickly, but if you're going to do it properly and get a really good detail, then it takes time. And do you know what? It takes money. It takes money. People always spend more than they think they're going to. Yeah. I mean, even if they've got a plan, and even if they've got a spreadsheet, they always spend more. So, yeah, I think that's just inevitable.
And what would be the single biggest piece of advice you'd give to somebody looking to renovate any area of their home?
Have a go yourself. You know, get on YouTube and ask people's advice and have a go, because you'd be amazed actually at the things you can actually do yourself. And obviously that saves you money because you're not paying somebody else. I spent years paying somebody else for wallpaper, and then a couple of years ago I just kind of thought, why am I doing this? And so I put some wallpaper up and it was an absolute doddle. So now I do all my own wallpapering. I wallpaper ceilings and do crazy stuff with it. So if you don't have a go, you'll never know.
Absolutely. Sound advice there. Thank you so much, Cyan. It's really lovely to meet you. Thank you. In terms of, there's so much out there now, isn't there, in terms of advice and what you could go for. If someone is out there looking online, what would you say is a main thing that they need to check when they're looking for advice about their renovation?
The first thing they need to do is check for the permissions. You know, it's all very well, you can have these wonderful ideas about what you want to do with your home, but there may be a couple of things that prohibit you, either planning permission or building regulations, listed building consent, conservation areas and that sort of stuff. So check that you don't come under any of those categories. Ring your local council, the building control or planning department, or both of your local council. They're really helpful. Tell them what you're thinking of doing, and they'll tell you where the pitfalls are or whether you need this permission or that permission. Anything electrical or plumbing, then you need to get the correct permissions from the organisations to get certified, etc. But check permissions first, because if that falls down, then don't build your hopes up too much and then find out you can't do it. So get those permissions done first.
Exactly. Definitely quality advice there, Mike. Thank you very much. I know you've got a busy day, so I'll let you get on.
Thank you very
Lovely
much.
Lovely to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think this is a great show. Really good inspiration for homeowners that are working on thinking about a new project, a flat roof extension, new kitchen or bathroom. So we were keen to get involved, and it's been terrific.
It's been really good, actually. The biggest thing I think that's been good for me have been all the seminars. Lots of good advice and things to think about.
And what was the best thing that you learned here today from one of those seminars?
I think it was a smart home one, really. The guy that was saying about what you need to do to get a smart home and when to bring people in. It's that planning stage, so not to wait too late in the day for anything to happen. It's sort of bringing it a lot earlier, because it can actually make things a lot easier in the long run.
And who would you recommend to come to this show if they're thinking of coming over the weekend?
Anyone who's thinking of any form of renovation, if I'm honest. We renovated about 6 years ago, and I wish we'd come 6 years ago, because we did a lot of things that we now have to redo with the extension that we're planning that we could have saved money on.
Obviously we're going through some work at home at the moment, so it just gives you more ideas. I mean, to be honest, I came with thinking I'm going to make a decision between one of two options, and I'm walking away with 5 different options, which I never knew of, which doesn't help, but at least it gives you a good idea, and there's some great discounts here, so it's good.
We're midway in a project, and some more tips and tricks, some more ideas, some new directions in the project, and yeah, I've got a few good ideas now.
So what's the best idea you've come away with?
So we've been looking at some underfloor heating options, and I think we're going to go for the whole house now, and upstairs as well too.
I thought there's quite a good range of variety, all sorts of different people, which is really handy, obviously, when you're looking to build your own house. So yeah, I found it really interesting.
And is that why you're here today?
Yes. Yeah, we've got some land, so yeah, the next plan obviously is to get going and build the house. So yeah, found it really interesting.
It's been quite illuminating, if you like. Yeah, we've learnt quite a bit. We've got quite a lot of pamphlets and to look at when we get home.
Yeah, it's been enlightening. Some of the stuff we've got to do. We've been looking around here and we've got some good ideas.
Oh, it's been good. It's there's a lot of opportunity here in terms of different brands, and I've definitely got what I came for.
Good.
Yeah.
And what were you here for?
I was here to find a couple of suppliers, and for different reasons as well, but it was good.
We'll go for you, Gary, first. What have you thought of the show here today?
It's been really good, really good, really good. Some of the things I've seen have been, I don't know, quite mystical, really. It's like the, what was it?
What's that?
The loft. The loft.
Well, it was a balcony, then it was a roof. It was magical. I don't know what was going on. It was some sort of wizardry. I don't know.
It was witchcraft. It really was. It really was. But I got loads of pens and pencils, so.
Well, that's always good.
Yeah, it's been very. It's been busier than I can remember it in the last couple of years, in terms of visitors and in terms of just the activity going on in the stands.
And what were you here for specifically today?
Well, it's a very general visit. We have a couple of extensions and refurbishments in mind, long-term project. Nothing specific, it's really what catches our eye, what might serve as a useful partner or project kind of component in the job.
Well, there you have it. Thousands of visitors, hundreds of exhibitors, and everybody seems like they've had a really great day here today at the Home Building and Renovating Show. That's all from me. That's all we have time for. I'll see you next time.